Hi, welcome to today's video. This is going to be a collection of predictions for where humanity is headed over the next several decades. My name is Lei. I am an intuitive medium. Spirit has gifted me the ability to see where they are trying to steward us over the next several decades. This is going to be a video that spans primarily the subjects of tech. We're going to look at art and where social media, for example, is headed. We're also going to be looking at the financial structure of the world, how society is structured in general, and the different ways that this transformation will completely upheave what we know and what society has become within the past several centuries. I'm also going to cover some of the more near future years, not just decades ahead, and I'm going to cover how that is going to affect many of us and our personal relationships. I'm going to look at this period spanning through 2026 and 2028. As the filming, I am doing this at the end of 2024, but 2025 onward for the next several years are going to also embody huge turning points for the collective. We've seen a lot of preparation, even from 2019, to be honest, and even if we thought that what we saw was already major, we already saw COVID with the pandemic and quarantine and things shutting down and again changing all over this world. There is still much more of that yet to come. Keep in mind when I talk about these things, the future is not necessarily set in stone. But what I described today is extremely likely. This is going to be the direction that the divine chooses to take us on. There are spirits that watch over this planet, and some spirits who are incarnated, some of those souls among us have signed up before birth to also help usher in a new era, to bring in development of this planet. So that might very well include you if you get any kind of yes feeling in your body. If you just resonate with the message that I've just given, then know that you probably have some kind of mission and some kind of role to play in elevating the energy of planet Earth. When spirit works hard to change things, it's very hard to resist those tides. How you respond, for those of you watching this that might have a lot of agency in your current incarnation, that's going to be up to you. You can think of fate and the circumstances of this planet as being like actual weather. You can't control the weather, right? Fate might bring in change. Fate might send a thunderstorm, right, in your city. How you respond to that is up to you, but know that the influence of spirit and those spirits who are working to pull us in a certain direction, that's going to be huge. It's very hard to resist that and to change that. And it's going to be up to you, maybe figuratively speaking, to decide, okay, am I going to shelter indoors? Am I going to stay out in the rain, right? If you think of it in that way, that kind of illustrates what is the room, right, that we have and the flexibility that we have to control our lives versus what is just the atmosphere that we're in. What is the collective weather that is happening that again is largely controlled and managed by the divine and by divine will. Again, those of you who have very fated lives, that may include some of you who have missions in this incarnation to complete, know that for you, spirit is going to have a heavy hand, and a lot of fated events are going to happen within especially the next 3 to 4 years. We're going to see a continued acceleration of change in people's lives. What's not meant to be will really witness just events and movements that are going to make it hard to keep those things in place. This is a time when spirit is just scooping across the earth. If you imagine a hand just sweeping across planet Earth as if it's turning over soil, this is kind of exactly the energy that's going to continue to happen, particularly through, I want to say 2028, 2029, although again, what happens within this decade is simply part of a larger movement and things that are going to continue happening over a span of decades, which again, I'm going to cover in this video. Okay, now when it comes to the overall direction and the big theme, I'm going to start with that. Spirit is guiding us, the divine, oh, I just got tingles right now. Spirit is guiding us toward collectivism. I can feel that this is likely the divine direction that we're meant to go in. For the past several centuries, for a long time, especially now within this era of late stage capitalism, we've seen ownership solidified and concentrated, power being concentrated among a very small number of people on this planet. There is a lot of imbalance. We see that in the imbalance between those who are marginalized and exploited and those who control, right, who have the upper hand over the working class, over the movement of resources on this planet. When I say that this planet and the societies on this planet, particularly I would say in the Western world, that is going to be one sphere of emphasis, not to say that of course these tides won't sweep across other regions of the world. When I speak of collectivism, it really does have a lot to do with ownership. Spirit, over the past few days in preparing for this video, Spirit has continued to show me Karl Marx. This concept of, again, ownership is really going to be challenged. I see, even now as I speak, I see like almost at a hand, this impact pushing, breaking, punching against something, which again, I believe is those structures of ownership and control that we see to this day. So when I see Karl Marx, that means that what we think of as ownership and products and who owns what, that's going to completely overturn over the next few decades. By the 2040s, we're going to see this concept of ownership really change. I don't know that it's going to be 100% gone in terms of private property, right, and the way that the ruling classes manage capital, but I do see, like, as if these were, if this was a board, it just suddenly, it feels like it's collapsed. By the 2040s, it just feels like this. And so what has been held in place by the 2040s within the next few decades, it's just gonna completely pretty much break. Spirit is bringing us that way. That's why we see this rise of unionizing. We're going to continue to see that through this decade into the 2030s. I think that within this year, of course, there's a strong emphasis on that within America in particular. I am based in the United States, so a lot of my context and the things I say might really be concentrated and emphasizing the US particularly, but just know that, of course, a lot of these themes again affect other regions and are similar across other nations and communities across the globe. When it comes to unionizing, there's going to be a lot of stagnation. There has been an increase in the labor movement, right? We've been seeing that in the US in terms of Amazon unions, Starbucks unions rising up, for example. Those are two huge corporations where the workers have really been working to amass their labor power together and fight for their rights. But we're going to see I don't want to say stagnation, but almost like a continued standoff. There might not be the most momentum or feeling of fruitfulness yet within the next 3 to 4 years. Into the end of the decade, right? From now, we're approaching 2025 from the time of filming this video. From now, over the next, especially 3 to 4 years, maybe even 7 years, going to the early 2030s, we're going to see potentially power amassing among different leaders, but it's going to be leaders among labor movements. There's actually a question mark here in terms of, it feels to me from Spirit, there's some flexibility perhaps in terms of timing and how this collective movement among labor and the working class might go. So keep in mind, this is an area where it feels like there is going to be this continued theme of class war, to be honest, class war and people fighting for their rights, people who are working for, again, those ruling classes that do exploit the power and the labor of the working class. So the question of timing there and whether we're going to see that turnaround, it feels very unlikely to see a massive windfall of change in that regard over the next several years. A lot is going to come into question, and it's going to be in this period of reconstruction. This period of reconstruction is also going to include art. If, for example, Spirit does want to tell me about tech and different industries and social media. Spirit is saying, for example, in particular, they're showing me Elon Musk, and Elon Musk is an example. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes to be a little bit literal, but this power of celebrity, I feel like that's waning. To be honest, I feel like that's probably waning already. You know, it's difficult when I do these videos sometimes to be a little neutral, because I, of course, have my own points of view about how I see things happening or how I'd like things to go or who I support and don't support. But when I see Elon Musk, I also kind of see Jeff Bezos. I see this slight almost like the beginning of a graph line starting to downturn. And I do feel like, especially by 2026, I just feel like there's this erosion in terms of the capital that they hold. I don't know if that's maybe literal capital, like their wealth, but it could also very much be their social currency, right? The growing dissatisfaction among the masses is going to lead to less appeal among the billionaires, among the richest in society. When people, although I'm sure some people may continue to idolize these type of people, I see that these oligarchies and the hierarchies, even dynasties, they feel like they're going to shrink, and they're going to be doing that for quite a while, especially into, I'm tempted to say 2036, 2037. I'm seeing right now as I speak, I'm also seeing, for example, the British, the England's ruling, what is it? England's monarchs, right? England's royal family. I'm seeing like Prince William. So there's going to be some amount of pressure there. My gut just kind of went like this. I got the word unpopularity. So we're going to see that from a cultural perspective, our view of the rich and the royal and the famous is really going to continue likely to decline. And again, that's going to be part of this movement, this shifting, where power is going to likely continue to shift, or there's going to be this opportunity and massive potential for the vast majority of the people on this planet to take back the power that is really ours. When it comes to social media, it looks like there's also going to be a little bit of a stuckness, and here I do kind of get the word stagnation over the next few years. I don't know how malleable this timeline is, but it does look roughly around 3 to 4 years, at least through 2026, 2027, maybe through 2028. And to me, it looks like social media, I just see kind of a barren, it looks like this very flat landscape, and I don't see any vegetation. I just see dirt, but it's interesting because the dirt almost has like, I don't know if it's like bulldozer tracks all across it. So it almost looks barren, but it's not. The dirt isn't like as dry as sand. It's not rocks. It's almost like sand that could become soil. So it feels like it's going to be this empty landscape in terms of social media. It's not going to feel like the heydays of when people were really enjoying social media and where it felt like we had platforms that we really liked and that were really effective for what people wanted to do with them. I do feel like we're going to be entering a no man's land. I'm starting pretty soon, within the next 3 to 4 months, within the first half of 2025. I keep seeing no man's land. I'm seeing a skull. It's really going to be the continued death blow of social media. I think that people are going to continue to find that it is unproductive for what they want to do. And of course, that when we say what is unproductive, what are people trying to use social media for? Well, that's of course to connect with people. That's to share what's going on in people's lives. Social media is also hugely integral to the operations and advertising for a lot of small businesses. So when it comes to small businesses, maybe having that organic growth that was possible before on TikTok, we've seen that those things just aren't as possible anymore. The way that companies have restructured their algorithms, the way that things have been bought out. We've seen Twitter bought out by Elon Musk, and that drove tons of users away. People don't use it as much anymore. There's this really huge question mark and just again a wasteland of like, what are people using? Do people even like using the social media that we do have? And it feels like the answer is largely no. So unfortunately, it looks like for a while, right? For at least the next up to 3 to 4 years at the very least. If it's shorter, could be like 2 years, but I just see in terms of tarot cards, Spirit is showing me my third eye. They are showing me the 7 of Swords, and they're also showing me the 2 of Swords. I'm also kind of seeing the 9 of Pentacles. So those cards, to me, when I see that in relation to these predictions on social media and the social media landscape, it represents an era where people are a little stuck. They're not really sure what to use. There's not a lot of passion, and there's not a lot of like decisiveness in terms of the players that are in the social media market, right? In terms of what companies are out there, I don't really feel like there's a clear winner. I think that would be how I would interpret the themes and the cards that I've seen so far. 7 of Swords, it's a time time maybe of gathering information. Maybe companies, or just again the whole realm of social media in general, are taking a time out. Maybe they're gathering information or planning what to do next. It's not a time of being out there and again of fruitfulness and fun, right? It's not a time of that where it's very clear what's going on in social media. It's a time where it's just like anyone's game. There's no clear winners. I think I'm even seeing like Succession. I think just to confirm the theme I'm seeing, I would think of that relating in terms of maybe like the siblings, right? And there's no clear winner, right? In the sense of that being a big theme of that TV show. For those of you who are familiar, it could be a similar situation where there are players who are kind of vying for that crown of being like the social media platform, but we've just seen a huge drop in how much people use and enjoy the existing platforms that we have now. So for those of you who use social media, and especially I think Spirit is speaking to those who are, I don't know if they're saying like mini conglomerates or people who are independents, people who are creatives or producing different things. Not necessarily big companies who use social media, but these smaller groups or people, you know, creators. Me seeing the Nine of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands could show that it's going to be a time when it may feel like there's pressure on, you know, I would include myself in that group, on those of us to be independent and to work more independently and to be a little bit less reliant on the distribution methods of the social media platforms. When I say distribution, right, the means of distributing what we're making, people who distribute their art, people who promote themselves, and maybe what they're selling, right? Again, for small businesses and small creators. So there's going to be an element of a feeling of burden, and that's why I was seeing the Ten of Wands, which shows someone carrying a very heavy load. It's not going to be easy for the smaller creators over these next few years. It's going to really feel like carrying, I'm feeling it now vividly. It's as if I'm carrying like a huge sack of rocks, and it also feels like you're trudging uphill. So it's going to be a time when there's when the opportunity to kind of be organic, it's a little bit stifled. It's not as easy. It's like I see that lightning in a bottle type of virality that TikTok was offering years ago. It's stale. I'm seeing almost like something stale from a kitchen cupboard. Like that's how it feels. It's not like that anymore. And for the foreseeable future, for those of you who are listening, especially who fall into this category, just keep in mind that it's going to be up to you to figure out how to deal with this stalled energy and to figure out how maybe to build community in other ways and to be more creative. There's going to be an emphasis on in-person skills and networking. That's going to be a big tool, potentially, a way for people to not be so reliant on things like Instagram and TikTok, and it's going to be much more important how well you are able to connect with others face to face. I even, just as I said that, I heard, I think it's from a Daft Punk song, the lyrics face to face. So keep in mind and feel free to reflect on that and to really start brainstorming. Those of you who are creatives and watching this video, because it's not going to be as easy as those golden eras and those golden periods where social media was just an easy way for people to connect long distance. It's going to be a lot about in-person communities. Virtual communities will still be there, but it's going to be important to, again, learn how to connect with different people who are local to you, and that being conducive to building artistic communities, maybe actual communities, platonic communities, right? Because social media is also for making friends for those of us who, those of you who are not creators or not owners of small businesses, but those who are really just on social media to really find other people and to be engaged with your friends. So keep that in mind. It's going to be a good time going into next year, especially the next 2 years going into 2026. It's going to be at least that long in terms of being a good time for those of you out there to reflect on what direction you want to take and what methods and means are available to you to connect with other people, again, outside of those social media platforms that we've generally grown reliant on, but again, dissatisfied with. Spirit has also given me predictions when it comes to art and how artists relate to their industry. So when it comes to collectively how art is doing, for those of you who are not familiar, we're really also in this dead zone where it feels clear that the way things are structured is unsustainable. When it comes to movies, people who work in movies, the way that that industry works, people are not making money. Artists, including actors and, just different people who work behind the scenes as well, are generally exploited by the way that these larger companies work. They're not making enough money. Streaming has really shown that people are not getting credited and paid for their work in the ways that they used to. And with music as well, we've seen that artists are heavily exploited by their management companies, these larger record labels when it comes to musicians. We've seen artists get squeezed by monopolies like Ticketmaster. So these are just two examples, right, of the ways in which business and business running as usual are just really ground artists into the dirt. They're not making enough money. People are not making living wages from making things that are so fundamental to the happiness of people and the happiness of society, right? What is the value of life if we don't have art, if we don't have music, if we don't have movies and TV shows for us to enjoy? Life is much less worth living and less beautiful without those things. So we've seen this, again, stagnation and, I would say honestly, like also not as much talent as before, or talent having a way to be manifest, right? We see that in a lot of industries. Yes, it's been common that for a long time we've seen like Nepo babies only generally having access to these different realms, and it's much harder for someone who does not come from the realm, who doesn't have the connections, who doesn't have the money to break into those industries. And that's been true for a long time, but I think that feels especially relevant now when it just is very clear that a lot of these industries are extra not viable means of income, right? Of living a fruitful life from the money that you make. When it comes to this realm of art, it feels like there is a lot of potential for change, especially from maybe 2026 onward. I don't know that it's going to hit just yet. It feels like a lot of artists are just resting, and there's been a feeling of, I'm seeing the Ten of Swords intuitively, which represents a feeling of rock bottom, of feeling like a martyr, feeling kind of beat up and things can't get worse. It seems that from what I'm seeing and what I just know with ear to the ground, hearing what artists and other creatives talk about on social media and other outlets, is that people just know that this is not working. It's not working. COVID really changed that too with quarantine and artists really struggling to figure out how to reach people right when things were shut down. And even though quarantine has been lifted, right, it's not like we see that things have turned around, right? We've seen Ticketmaster continue to get called out for the hold that it has over performances and exorbitant fees, and it's just bad for consumers and it's bad for artists. So there's this potential there, this opportunity. I think that this in particular, in terms of like the near future state of art and how art is produced and managed, it does feel like it's not set in stone. It's like I'm seeing a stone and I'm seeing the ground, and it's like it's not embedded into the surface that it's resting on. So I feel like there's this question of how things are going to land. This is something where that opportunity is going to be probably, I don't know if they're telling me, I don't know if they're giving me the word collected or maybe collective agency. So that could be up to the decisions that many artists make altogether, and what energies creative people put forth, whether they do seek to and actually do challenge the existing structures and establishments. We'll have yet to see that. That to me, Spirit is saying, is a very loose prediction. But Spirit is saying that, again, the drive here is going to be toward collectivism, and even if in the nearish future, even for the next up to 14 years, even if that's not set in stone and it's kind of up in the air in terms of how the relations are going to form, right? Again, between production, distribution, artists, consumers, that's up in the air. But Spirit keeps giving me the word collectivism, and they're saying that the end goal is still, it feels to me, still the same. And this concept of ownership, and they're showing me Karl Marx again to show this feeling of collectivism, it feels like there's something about accessibility of art that Spirit is trying to widen, and instead of things being accessible only in niche how would I say it, like niche pockets. It sounds like they're showing me like HBO Max, then you have these titles, right? It feels like Spirit's seeking to break that sort of division. To me, it feels like I would assume that those are examples of HBO being like, you stream HBO, you subscribe to that, you pay a subscription, and then there's all these other pockets and companies that are doing their own thing and have their own library. And Spirit I do feel like they're seeking to break those things, and there's something about art being more widely available to people. And I don't know if it's with less of a buy-in, but it to me, the Spirit has continued to show me like a public library when it comes to this area of prediction. So to me, there's something about the way libraries function, right? And there's accessibility. I don't know if it's maybe about taking turns or not, and maybe that being the way that people enjoy some forms of art, but there's something there where Spirit does want to break down the inaccessibility and things being locked behind paywalls. That's also going to apply to probably information. Spirit is showing me JSTOR, right? JSTOR being a database where a lot of academic articles and essays and journals are just locked up if you don't pay for JSTOR, which is of course antithetical to, I don't know, democracy. People put all this work into developing information, developing knowledge, and the archives that should be available for the public to use and to learn from and to continue to develop together. And those things have been locked up. And again, that's another instance of an example of capitalism and how that really constrains things, keeps things accessible only to the minority, and not to the greater public, and not for the greater good. Greater level information is going to be democratized. It's going to be a lot less secrecy over the coming decades. It feels like truth is going to really come out, and I get the word intuitive to suggest that as people become potentially more spiritual and more conscious, the truths of who we are will become much more apparent. So not only will like literal academic information hopefully become democratized with little to no paywall, hopefully no paywall. So I think what they would be trying to suggest to me through these visions, but the truth of who we are and what we read about each other intuitively, it's going to be much harder for people to keep secrets. People are not going to be as oblivious before. For example, it's almost like the way that a lot of people have been, especially because we've been trained to like maybe not read people or to not be intuitive. Maybe we don't pick up on the moods that other people have. Maybe we don't intuit what they're going through. But moving forward, Spirit is really highly focusing and fine-tuning our antenna as individuals, but of course what we develop as individuals contribute to the larger development of the collective. So if I and you we're honing our emotional intelligence and our spiritual consciousness and our intuition, we're going to not only be better to heal and understand ourselves, but also to look at other people and see, oh, I know why you did that. I know why you act that way, and it's maybe because of this wound. Obviously, hopefully we can use that, have that information and not judge each other, but hopefully that will be conducive to more compassion and more connection and understanding. But it's going to be much harder for people to keep veils up. This has just been a time of unveiling and unmasking. We saw that a lot this year. People's true selves came out. We've had massive scandals in terms of public figures being exposed for wrongdoing. That's been happening for some time now. For the past several years, the Me Too movement has been showing the rot and corruption and decay and abuse that is really at the core of a lot of industries at the highest rungs of society. And again, people speaking out and sharing what they've been through is also one example and one way that truth has come out, and truth, being that platform that is going to lead to, again, more of that, right? It's just part of a bigger movement toward truth. We're seeing, obviously from what I've been saying so far, Spirit is steering us toward collectivism, more democracy, no paywalls, right? More access for people, less hierarchy, less popularity of the elites and celebrity culture probably, but especially of the ultra wealthy. That's going to wane a lot because people are really struggling. We've already seen that. People are disillusioned. People know that the reason why Jeff Bezos has like billions of dollars is because Amazon workers have to pee in water bottles and suffer extremely and make almost no money versus what they're actually contributing to the company with their work, right? The value that they produce that lines the pockets of people in charge like Jeff Bezos versus contributing to their own well-being, right? We've seen a lot of these warehouse workers, a lot of people who are tenured teachers, right, and working for the structures of universities, right? They're homeless. People are without resources. People are without money. People cannot pay rent. People cannot buy houses. And we're seeing all of this really solidified and emphasized within this decade. And again, Spirit is continuing to bring us to that breaking point so that we can push forward, because we know collectively that this is unsustainable. We've seen, especially since COVID or the pandemic, that people want to work from home, where people don't want to have to go into office for no reason. People are not going to accept terrible working conditions. People do not want to take jobs for no pay, where they know they're being exploited, little to no pay, right? Basically no pay for what you get, for what you make for the company and for the bosses. We're going to see a lot of that dissatisfaction continue. And again, on a broader scale over the span of decades, we are going to see shifts happening, because why? We are being aided, we are being assisted by divine will. Spirit of the divine, whatever you want to call that, God, the universe, does not like, it feels like is not down with what has been going on in planet Earth. And that's why it's a time of change, and why a lot of spirits who work closely with this earth, and who again may include even some of you, are ushering in change. Now, on a collective personal scale, this is the part where I think it's time to bring it back to closer future. Although I have been talking a little bit about the 2020s and 2030s still in the other sections. I'm going to bring this back to just everyday people, and what that means for you, even if you're not that invested in what happens to social media or tech or art or creativity, even though yes, we should be, and those things affect all of us. But for those of you who are watching this, wondering like, okay, what does this mean for me and my relationship, Spirit does want to share. I do feel like a lot of y'all that were born around 2002, in the early 2000s, there's going to be like a massive, I don't know if they're showing me a tornado or like a massive, like fast spiraling downward, but there's going to be a lot of upheaval for y'all pretty soon by 2028. So we're already almost in 2025 again as of the filming of this video. By the time I release this video, it's probably already January 2025. So it feels like for those of you who are born in the early millennium, there's going to be I think Spirit is giving me the word crisis. There's going to be a lot of I don't know if they're telling me like loving or healing, but when it comes to personal relationships, and this does include platonic relationships, there's going to be a lot of change, including in 2026. A lot of you are going to be prepared in 2025 in some way for the massive breakdowns that are going to come in 2026. So just keep that in mind. If some of you who are quite young, who are in your like mid 20s, this year or soon, just keep in mind, and again, listen to if you feel like this part resonates with you energetically, that probably means that this message is for you. When it comes to outside of this generation, I will get to y'all or look more broadly and see if Spirit has any messages, but Spirit did really want to touch into this group of folks in this age range, because they want to let y'all know there's going to be a lot of activation. I get the phrase twin flame, so a lot of y'all are going to be meeting some very intense soul connections, and there may be a feeling of breaking apart. When I say there's a feeling of breaking apart, that could mean that for a lot of y'all, when you meet these very intense soul connections, it could really feel like, I don't know how to put it, but just challenging situations. I'm seeing the Ten of Swords again here to represent feeling at rock bottom, feeling like you're not a winner in this situation, feeling like it just brings up such emotional crisis for you and causes you to reevaluate the fundamental I don't know, underpinnings of your life, right? How what is life to you? How have you been living your life? Who are you? A lot of those existential questions are going to be brought to the forefront, in large part because of the catalyst of your soul connections, likely twin flames that will come up within the next couple years or so. So a lot of y'all, Spirit is actually telling me maybe some of my clients, I think maybe for some of my clients, I predicted that being a time when those connections would happen. But again, this is going to be highly, highly relevant for some of the the younger folks are born roughly just maybe a little bit short of the year 2000. So just keep that in mind. Spirit really wanted to share this message with some of y'all who are watching this video. If you felt called to this video and you felt called to that part in particular and you felt any, again, tingling or yes feelings, any, I don't know, energetic electricity at that part, just know that that might apply to you. For those of you who are interested in getting more in-depth details and predictions of that, just keep in mind, of course, I do also offer, as of now, personal predictions. So you can always book a reading with me as an intuitive medium if you would like to touch base with someone who can relay and get those messages for you in terms of what you're likely to experience in that period. Keep in mind that the way that a lot of you will potentially be elevating the energy of planet Earth is simply through your individual healing. You going into yourself emotionally and spiritually and unearthing your own challenges and your traumas and your wounds, this on its own already contributes to, again, the collective healing on this planet. The more that people understand what hurt is, the more that they can be in tune with love. And the more that people understand harm, the more that they are likely to refuse to do harm and to refuse to receive harm. And these facets, I think, are such an important part of why the field of psychology, or just the realm of psychology, not necessarily like everybody's going to be looking into that formally, right? But just informally, in terms of us looking at our own psyches, and people doing a lot of, I don't know, self-help activities, quote unquote. But again, people becoming more and more interested in spirituality becoming more out in the open and more widely accepted. These are going to be continuing themes as the collective moves forward. So don't feel like you have to have a big dramatic mission to help the earth. You simply being with yourself and realizing what bothers you on a deeper level and what hurts you've been carrying and the ways that you've been acting the ways that you've been acting as a result of those harms, right? With those actions and behaviors, potentially keeping yourself back or hurting others, is really going to be so important for changing society. It all starts with one person, and that person changing themselves will change the relationships they will have with others, would also change what our values are as a society, right? When people prioritize care, then ideally we can create societies that are structured around that principle, right? Versus the societies that we see now, where largely the ways of being across this planet are, for the most part, really centered around individualism. We see this a lot, of course, again, in the Western world. We do see that in the US a lot, for example, and it's very isolating. It's difficult to connect and to fight collectively, right, for change, because people don't know how to connect with each other. People don't know how to fight for themselves, let alone for their communities, right? Let alone for maybe like the working class in general. So you fighting for yourself, right? If you're watching this video and you're kind of like, okay, all the predictions so far, but this is the part where now for everyone watching this, hopefully it will hit just how important you are and how we cannot, oh, I'm getting a little emotional, how we cannot underestimate how we cannot underestimate how essential it is that you are well, and that you are spiritually in touch with yourself, and that we are all individually connected to love. When we do those things, sorry, I'm like really playing the messages at the moment, but when we do those things, that is going to be what allows the tides to change. This is the direction that Spirit is moving in, and this is why Spirit is going to bring us like a lot of catalysts, especially over the next 1 to 2 years. So Spirit is going to be, I'm about to tear up, y'all. But Spirit is going to be sending us a lot of spiritual there it is. Spirit's going to be sending us a lot of spiritual connections, events, evidence that points us to the deepest shadows within ourselves, will show us where and how to change. So do not be daunted if the next year, and even going to 2026, if that's very challenging for you. For a lot of us, that will be financially. It will show us these questions, bring up these questions of fundamentally, like, what is our relationship to our meaning of life, right? What does that mean for us? What is it to live a satisfying life? What is unsustainable for us moving forward? For all of us to make these essential decisions in our lives, again, will develop not only us, but will develop this planet into a world of less pretense, a world of less repression, and a world of actions and, again, decisions and structures less fueled by shame and secrecy and exploitation. For us to live in authenticity and to be truthful with each other and to have more access to information, and to care for each other, and to really break against inequality, right, and to have peer-to-peer relationships, is really the fundamental drive. That's really where Spirit seeks to take us, and we all have a part to play in that. So that really sums up, I think, the predictions for today, and I hope that by now y'all understand and hopefully can feel within yourselves where Spirit might want to take you within this collective shift, right, that is going to span for a long time, and especially by the 2040s we're going to see a lot of that collapse. You remember, if I saw earlier how society is, and that consolidation of money, power, resources is really going to sag by then, and then especially going into 2040s, by the 2050s likely. I keep seeing, and I've seen this before in visions that I've had like years ago, but I'm almost seeing this aquatic looking castle. It's sort of purple and blue. It actually looks like a sculpture I made a long time ago, but it really reminds me of like an under the sea sort of structure, again, castle, like I said. And to me that might represent a new and ideal, more spiritual way of being. I do think of water as being very emotional and spiritual, and so if I see a castle that looks like it's of the water and within the water, but you know, it, to me, that represents almost like an idealism, a way of being more emotionally in tune. And the castle here not necessarily being a bad symbol, but perhaps meaning it's a new structure, it's established, right? The ways that Spirit is moving us, perhaps again by within the next 30-40 years, I do feel like that will have largely been constructed, at least by a lot, if not fully developed by that time. 2056 in particular is going to be a key year. The 2040s, key years, I don't know exactly what they all mean, but I don't know if it's 2032 or maybe 2036 is going to be an important year. That's going to be like a development check-in with Spirit. Spirit's going to see how Earth is moving along. They're going to see how we're all doing. 2048 will be a further time of reckoning and really finally closing the door on a lot of these skeletons in the closet that maybe we've banished by then, or, you know, old dying dead systems that we've closed out. 2048 is going to be the time of reckoning for that. And then by the time of the 2050s, especially 2056, I don't know if 2052 is much, I don't know, I'm trying to just feel whatever years come to, but especially 2056, that's going to be a time when it really is a new era. I hear the song lyrics, I think, the song lyrics that go, it's a new dawn, and it's going to be really a new era by then. Right now, this is really it's almost like a seeding period, but it's an acceleration, right? We've actually already been prepared more intensively, of course, in the past like 5-6 years. So within this next period of the 2020s, that's going to be just further acceleration of what's happening. Although again, keep in mind that acceleration might feel also like a question mark or stagnation for some people, and again for some industries or sectors of human life and society. So if anybody has any questions on this video, let me know. I do also have another political prediction confirmation video that I've made somewhat recently, and if any of you would like to see updated political predictions, things that concentrate more particularly on maybe specific figures or maybe the realm of American politics, again, me being in America, that will probably be where I'm more comfortable predicting, and have some real life context that feeds into my being able to better interpret those predictions. Let me know if anybody has any other requests or any questions, anything you'd like me to cover in these videos or maybe in a podcast episode. Feel free to request that. You can also always book with me as a medium on my website, mahiwagale.com. For those of you who don't know, Mahiwagale is the name of my spiritual practice. So I hope that some of y'all enjoyed this video and took something out of it. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. I'm looking forward to seeing what change Spirit has for me and you in the years to come.